Paul, we've also seen the data from KEYNOTE-407 in squamous.
Right.
We have a little bit of conflicting data with IMpower 131,
Right.
which is squamous, which was kind of positive, but not fully positive.
But not fully positive.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So it was a very interesting ASCO last year where they were presented in two different sessions.
Yeah.
Because I think for 07 in particular, the secondary look at the OS came out later. And so that was in a clinical science symposium, so it made it very difficult to catch both. Yeah. But 407 really is similar to 189, practice changing. This was a randomized phase 3 trial of a backbone of carboplatin and taxane. It was investigators' choice as to whether or not patients receive paclitaxel or nab-paclitaxel, and the randomization was to pembrolizumab with this, followed by maintenance pembrolizumab or placebo, and it was positive by PFS across all PD-L1 cut points. Overall survival, all PD-L1 cut points is very similar to what we saw with 189, and that OS benefit really has been quite powerful. And this is where, in part, IMpower 131 has failed. There is no OS advantage, PFS but no OS. And then at least in the initial look of the data, there was this sort of squirrely middle section for PD-L1 positive patients, intermediate, where they seem to do worse when you added atezolizumab, which is very difficult to make heads or tails of, but also makes it difficult to interpret.
Yeah, so one of the things that's bothered me about those two trials is the performance of the control arm. Because the control arm on 407, where 60% of the patients got carbo-tax and 40% got carbo-nab-paclitaxel, is 11 months. And then on 131, where the control arm was all nab-paclitaxel, the median survival was 14 months. And obviously it's harder to show a difference if your control arm does better. So I haven't really understood why that would be. There is some suggestive data that nab-paclitaxel may have more activity in squamous, so maybe that's the explanation, although I don't necessarily believe that. Right. But you have the same thoughts, concerns?
Yeah, I have the same thoughts. It's very difficult to know for sure. These are cross-trial comparisons that are there, so each study has to be interpreted really within the context of what happened in that study, and that's sort of where we ended. But again, I think your point is a good one. The performance of the control arm does matter. There's that signal potentially of increased efficacy with nab-paclitaxel. Is that part of it? I don't necessarily think so because of other things that we've seen with the performance of pembrolizumab-based regimens versus other immunotherapy-based regimens.
Corey?
If you go to the 407 trial, and I believe this was in the forest plots, when they actually they looked at the hazard ratios with nab-pac as opposed to solvent-based, it was actually a bit lower. So that may actually be the preferential regimen to build upon. And again, it may be a superior squamous drug. So the fact that one trial exclusively used nab-pac, or at least in that cohort that was compared, and this one was pick your taxane, may be less of a difference. I want to emphasize one thing that we have not mentioned. 024, 189, 407 all featured crossover in the control arm at the time of progression. Patients who were on the control were eligible and was built into the trial to get single agent pembro. And despite that, and including this population, we still saw a consistent overall survival advantage.
Remind me how many people actually have crossed over?
The majority. At least in 189, it's over 50%. When you actually look in the intent to treat, it's about 50%. When you look at those who are eligible for crossover in these trials, it's on the order of 60 to 70%. It may not be pembro on trial necessarily, but it's usually some sort of immunotherapy.
But Julie Bramer presented some of that crossover data. You would think if you are greater than 50%, using the oncogenic driver paradigm, does it really matter if you get a TKI in the EGFR first or second line, as long as you get it at some point? The suggestion from 024 was that even if you were highly positive and got pembro second line, the survival didn't catch up.
Right.
Right? So there's, I don't know what that tells us.
I think it's the nature of the population. Some of these people just develop fulminant progression. They can't get to the crossover, or perhaps you give your best drug first.